your small business is booming and ready to expand, you might say something like,
"It's happening!"
Booyah!
Yeah!
Crushed it.
But if you need someone who can actually help protect your growing business, just say,
"Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there."
And just like that, your State Farm agent can help you get the coverage you need for your new space. For your small business insurance needs, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Did you know 39% of teen drivers admit to texting while driving? Even scarier, those who text are more likely to speed and run red lights. Shockingly, 94% know it's dangerous but do it anyway. As a parent, you can't always be in the car, but you can stay connected to their safety with Greenlight Infinity's driving reports. Monitor their driving habits, see if they're using their phone, speeding, and more. These reports provide real data for meaningful conversations about safety. Plus, with weekly updates, you can track their progress over time. Help keep your teens safe. Sign up for Greenlight Infinity at greenlight.com/podcast.
Hello, Rag Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Allo or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret. Businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
Sam.
Dougie.
MLS returns on Friday, the 47th edition of the United States' top division. For so long derided globally, today we want to explore the changes to the league's reputation and explain why you should care about MLS in 2025.
Is MLS like a joke compared to like other leagues around the world?
I think that in the United States, a lot of people just kind of push it to the side.
I wouldn't say it's a joke, but it's definitely underrated.
I do not. No.
It's over! It is time to add a sixth star to the badge! The LA Galaxy once again have won MLS Cup!
Hello and welcome to the 23rd edition of The Truth Podcast. I'm Dougie Critchley, and with me today I have my brilliant co-host Sam Tighe. Hello, Sam.
Hello, I'm glad you're keeping count. This is just not something that crosses my mind. Every time you say the number, I'm like, oh,
I'm very methodical. I start every doc with The Truth, episode 23, and this is episode 23. It's a good one.
It is, yeah, seemingly. I was surprised that there have been 47 editions of MLS. I hadn't looked that up either.
They haven't.
Right, okay.
I'm already wrong.
Here we go.
You're not wrong. There's 47 editions of the American Top Flight.
You did kind of say that.
But
I did
17
of
them, I think, happened before. This is MLS's 30th season, and there are 30 teams in it for the first time. So they're doing this big 30-30 thing going on. So 96 it was formed.
I like it. Okay, and joining us as ever, as you've just heard there, we have the man who was compared to Squirtle last week, the ever reliable Mr. Jack Collins, Mr. Jack Squirtle. Hello, Jack.
Hello, how are we?
I'm very well. Can you explain to anyone listening who hadn't seen this?
So last week I was asked and fortunate enough to go on with Dougie on the Lowdown on Sky Sports, and we had a great chat about grading managers, and a clip of this went onto the social channels of Sky Sports. To which one fellow decided he was going to reply, this bloke looks like if Squirtle was a human. I was wearing a baby blue jacket, and all the colour schemes were right. And I couldn't even argue with him, so I quote tweeted and I said, this is the highest compliment I've ever been paid.
I think if you're going to get compared to a Pokemon, you can do a hell of a lot worse than Squirtle. And I think, unbeknownst to this guy, who's presumably working straight off appearances, you and Squirtle share a certain yappiness and the lack of respect for the law.
Yeah.
I think it's bang on characteristically and physically.
I take it as a compliment. Actually, weirdly, at university, it was something that we used to joke about because the fella next to me had the nickname Turtle because he had a really good six-pack. And my friend Henry on the other side had the nickname Badger. So it was Badger and Turtle. And they were like, what are you? And I was like, I don't know. And they were like, you're Squirtle. So this is not the first time I've been compared to an aquatic Pokemon. Okay. But anyway, that guy better watch out because I'll go and aquatail him or give him a water gun or something.
Very good.
I'm starting to believe that this random commenter on the internet
might be me.
Someone you went to uni with.
I didn't go to uni with any Welsh people, sadly.
Well, judging off the back of many YouTube comments I've had over the years, that is a very, very kind one. So take it. Right, guys, today I'm going to kick off with a little confession. I've never really cared about MLS and it's never really piqued my interest. And I don't say that because I hate American sport or I've got anything against the concept of MLS. I've just always felt that with my club, Sunderland, often spending time outside the Premier League as low as League One in recent years, with an interest in the other top 5 leagues around Europe and a bit of Eredivisie and a bit of Primera Liga, I just genuinely feel like I don't have enough space in my sort of football sort of abilities to consume as much as possible, hopefully. And MLS has always kind of passed me by. And I wanted to start this podcast, guys, where I'm going to play the role of sort of investigator. I'm going to speak as if I am the layman, the sort of complete idiot, which would be fairly easy because I'd often do that on this podcast. And I will play the role of someone that, doesn't know very much about MLS. And I want you guys who have so much experience talking and so much passion talking about MLS to explain why it is special. So we're going to kick off with a very simple question, Sam. If you had 1 minute to sell MLS, what would you say?
I have something prepared.
Love it.
I'm going to use this as a little promo, cleverly, to talk about a lot of the things that we are going to end up covering today, right? So it's always been a bit quirky and a bit different, and it's been something that has a chaotic nature, and you're going to have to either lean into that and accept it and relish that, because if you don't, you're going to find it a massive turn-off, right? Because it is different, so you have to lean into those differences. Now, more and more often nowadays, we are seeing players moving over from Europe in their 20s rather than their 30s. So its reputation is already starting to change over the years. And now we have young South American players who are potentially the next big thing, picking MLS first rather than Europe and using it as a springboard. So the examples there would be Thiago Almada and John Duran, who came from Chicago Fire, of all places. And of course, if you're a very good young player and you want to make that step into Europe, Diego Gomez just joined Brighton. So these players I've mentioned here, you know these players. Do you want to know about those players a couple of years earlier and be ahead of the curve? Well, to do so, you will watch MLS football. And, if you don't want to know about those players, but you just want to watch, arguably the greatest player in the world, then Lionel Messi currently plays there. His mates also play with him. Luis Suarez, Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets. It is a thrilling throwback to the Barcelona days, except in pink, of Inter Miami. And something that's really important, probably the most important thing that I can say today or over the course of this episode, is that over the years, MLS have changed their rules and have become more closely aligned with what I would consider to be real football, like as in how European football works. They're less closed off, they're less US style centric and more open to the real global world. And as they continue that transition, they become much more relevant.
Okay, we're going to get into some of the rule changes and interesting things that they've done ahead of this season as well. But Jack, I want to bring you in as well. You've been talking about MLS this week on Ranks FC as well. And I know that, you've got a lot of passion for the league as well.
Yeah, I love MLS. I mean, in so many ways, it is the epitome of the Chaos League, right? And it's something that I don't think goes kind of noticed enough, shall we say. It slips under the radar that over in America, and I think it might be because, especially from Europe and the UK, the games are often on at quite difficult times. Now, I quite like that because they're often
You don't sleep.
Yeah, I don't sleep. And also because, when you get to 10 p.m, you're like, what's on? You're like, oh, wicked. MLS is just starting. And then you can watch 4 more hours of football. It's amazing. But I think that kind of Sam makes a lot of very, very good points there. I also think that where MLS is at its best is when it kind of fuses the two cultures, and actually one of the things that I've seen kick back at from within a US perspective, especially over the last few years, is teams becoming, or the idea of things becoming too Eurocentric or kind of Europeanized. And I think we've seen this with a couple of team names. Montreal Impact becoming CF Montreal went down incredibly badly, still does. A lot of people still refer to them as the Impact. And I think that the change from SC to FC was something that I kind of jarred with, because whilst I call this game football, it's called soccer in America in the same way that it is in Ireland and Australia and a lot of other different places. And I think that you have to dial into those traditions as well. And where I think MLS has started to get things right over the last couple of years is fusing those two things together really well. Yes, there are kind of elements that are, should we say, borrowed, but utilized from across the world, whether that be South America, whether that be Europe, in fan culture, in the football, in all of it.
You've got the marches, you've got the ultra section, you've got the songs, you've got the capos. They've tried to take a lot of those really good elements. Unfortunately, some of the execution has been quite poor, and there's been a lot of snobbery around it. But I'm a bit more understanding, and I like the attempt. I like the idea. Sometimes the execution is a bit off, but the fact that I've stood in the Toronto FC ultra section, and I've been in that section with a man with a megaphone is in front of me, and as they try to replicate Italian football culture, fair play. How often do we complain about dead atmospheres even in Premier League stadiums? And we sit there in the London Stadium, West Ham, 60,000 people, and you can hear individual men groaning from 50 yards away. Which one do you want to try and address it or not? I applaud their attempt, at least, of installing some of those cultural elements.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I do think that we're getting closer to the ideal kind of fusion of, you watch a lot of American sport, and so much of it is about spectacle, right? We've just come off the back of a Super Bowl where we saw the halftime shows and the pre-match shows and all of those different things. And I think that America gets a lot right in terms of spectacle. And I think that sometimes when you try to kind of Europhile football too much, you end up losing the essence of what actually made it great. And I actually do think that we're getting towards a point where MLS, where that nice sort of middle point is starting to come about. The truth, as they say, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, 100%. I also think, just from an outsider's point of view as well, there's almost no point in trying to perfectly replicate European football because it doesn't have the same level of history. It doesn't have the same level as intrigue as over here. So creating a worse version will just instantly lead to more snobbery of European football fans like myself saying, oh, why should I care about this? Whereas actually holding on to what makes America unique, I think is a really good place to start. We started off the episode by talking about the 47 editions of the top flight in America in the 30 years of MLS. Sam, what has fundamentally changed about MLS over the years?
Well, there'll be lots of people that can chart this better than me, and there's probably people listening that would actually be able to index it better than me, but I can give you an overall idea, because I can tell you that the very early idea of MLS, and often people jump mentally there to the wacky penalty shootouts and the crazy looking kits and, teams that are now defunct and Pele turning up at one point. That's very far in the past. But the actual changes that they've tried to make over the last 20 years or so, as I kind of hinted in my elevator pitch, is trying to bring MLS into relevance. And of course, they've had to do that by breaking out of their own US sports structure. So all the major developments that have happened that have actually changed the league for the better have been about breaking their own rules. You have to understand, Dougie, that in 2006, every team in MLS operated under a salary cap, and the salary cap was $1.9 million per team for the whole year. How the hell are you supposed to get any good players to play for you if you have to share $2 million across 25 people? Landon Donovan had the biggest salary in the league that year at $400,000 a year. So just under a quarter of the total team cap. And obviously this is all very American.
So did he have to fit in within the structure? He wasn't a designated...
No, this was before... So in 2006 was the last year before designated players came in. So David Beckham ruined the whole system.
Yeah.
LA Galaxy decided that they wanted to sign David Beckham.
And he's doing it again. What?
And David Beckham said, well, I'm not playing for you if you can only offer me, $500,000 a year. Why on earth would he do that? He gets one of those from every Hague Club commercial, right? So why would you do that for a whole year's work? He was still very good. So they changed the rules and they allowed David Beckham to play in MLS. And he only counted $335,000 towards the salary cap that year, but they paid him $6.5 million. So towards the team salary cap, he cost only a small amount, but the owners just paid him all the rest on top. And he was above the law in that respect. And that caught on, obviously. Since then, we've seen more than 250 different designated players. You can have 3 or up to 3. You used to be able to trade your DP slots, I believe. You can't do that anymore, but teams that didn't want to use them, owners that didn't want to spend that much money on those stars, just wanted to kind of exist in the currents of the league. They could trade those slots away. That was the big start, and that was MLS saying, hey, how about we join the real world for a moment? And that's the only way they could possibly get a very, very good player that wasn't just American born to play for them. Now Messi plays there, and he's on, I think, $20 million a year. And that surpassed Lorenzo Insigne's horrendous deal at Toronto. He's been possibly the worst DP in history.
Yeah, dreadful.
I think he was $15 million a year. If he hit the bonuses, probably didn't because he was.
Has he just been? I haven't really been following him since he went over there. Has he just been injury prone? What's happened?
Bit of injury.
Mostly just dreadful.
But just it didn't work out. And they tried to sign a bunch of Italians to make him feel better. Federico Bernardeschi went. An old centre-back, I can't remember his name, he went as well. And it just nothing. Just not good enough at all.
They tried to shift him on this winter. He's still in the parlance, right? He's still very strange to say this. But in the off-season, they tried to shift him onwards. And there was a couple of clubs in Europe who had interest. And he was like, nah, I'm going to stay here, see out my deal. So
it's just such an attractive wage, why not? So there's the DP stuff. And then they introduced the Under-22 initiative as well. So it's effectively another DP slot or 2 for a player who is under the age of 22. And it's just another cost-effective way of sneaking in good players. They're trying to incentivise MLS teams there to go and find really good young talent. Because what happened with the DPs, it was all the old dudes, right? It was Gerrard, Lampard, Kaka, Rooney.
Henry.
It was all mid-30s guys. And what was the reputation of MLS at that point? Retirement league. Yeah? And they were like, right, we need to do something about this. So the Under-22 initiative incentivises teams to go and find a really good young player, and he'll cost you less on the salary cap as well. So these examples aren't as galaxy as the others, but Dejan Joveljic, who was one of the best strikers in the league, he was found on the Under-22 initiative. Santiago Moreno from Portland was, and my favourite, Jose Cifuentes, who was at LAFC for a while, he was too. And all these players are really good. So you've got incentive to go and find better players to improve the quality of the league. Oh, we skewed too old. Okay, now an incentive to go and find really good young players and balance these things out. And I've been talking for a while here, so I'm going to pass to Jack. But Jack, this winter we saw a watershed moment in the form of actual transfers being allowed in MLS. What a way to celebrate 30 years. Would you like to do an actual transfer?
Yeah, well, actual transfers within the league. So this is something that should probably be put together. So there was, for years, you had to trade within the system. Now, Sam talked about DP slots there, but there was lots of different things that went under the kind of acronym of GAM, General Allocation Money.
It's just monopoly money.
And
it's not real.
It basically was supposed to disincentivize people from bouncing around between clubs, right? So that people would stick with the clubs. But what it actually did was incentivize people to leave, because you couldn't be traded for a fee to another MLS club. And instead, you see transfers like, let's say, Brandon Vasquez, who's a USMNT international, who is having an absolutely cracking time of it at Cincinnati, and then he moves to Monterrey because Cincinnati cannot turn down the money that's come in for him, and yet he can't stay within the country and can't stay within the league because you're not allowed to do that. So in the summer, intra-league transfers are introduced, which basically means that you can now just pay an amount of money for a player in another MLS team.
Why is it taking so long to introduce it?
I think it's one of those things that, obviously trades are a huge part of American sports culture, and also is, it's taken a while, I think, for MLS to kind of unextricate itself, should we say, from the other big sports. In that, this is a model that they'll have gone, well, the NFL are doing it, the NBA are doing it, the NHL are doing it. These things work, right? This is a culture that works within the context of the league we're in. And also, it's a strange one, because actually American sports are just incredibly socialist, right? In terms of the way that they set up, the team that comes bottom gets the first pick out the draft. Now, that's more important in basketball and American football than it is in MLS, because the super draft hasn't produced all that many brilliant talents.
It's almost worthless in MLS context. But that was one of the things you could do if you wanted Brandon Vasquez. You could offer a draft pick. But that's not interesting. That's not attractive at all. What they want is $10 million.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, but it's not attractive, I think is the thing. And so I think it's taken a while to kind of just be like, okay, we actually run slightly differently to the rest of the US model. The kind of acceptance that the Super Draft is not producing top-of-the-range players in the same way that the drafts in NBA and NFL are, for example. And so I think it's basically just taken a little while for them to find the kind of happy medium. And also, I think what's really triggered it, and I was listening to Landon Donovan and Tim Howard speaking about this earlier this week, and they were talking about the fact that what it does now is it incentivizes players to remain within MLS. Yes. So if you can now trade, within the league, there is a sense of being like, okay, you can now make money from a player. You're just as happy to sell, let's just say USMNT International, just for the sake of the argument, to, if you're Cincinnati, you could sell him to an Austin, where weirdly Brandon Vasquez has ended up now. But, instead of having to go via Monterrey and then buy him back, they would have just been able to keep that within it's just taken a long time for it to come through and understand that the trade market or the transfer market operates differently to what it perhaps does everywhere else.
I think also just like, it's okay for MLS to want to kind of stay true to the tenets of US sport and how US sport works. But there's a slow and growing realization that you're never going to develop as a league and retain the best players if you don't essentially align yourself with the other top leagues in Europe and across the world. And so we've had some very interesting transfers over the course of the winter where finally these MLS players are swapping clubs for real money.
Yeah, what have been some of the highlights?
So the first one, from what I can tell, was Dejan Joveljic. So I mentioned him earlier as an under-22 initiative signing. He's moved to Sporting Kansas City for $4 million. That was on February the 2nd. The following day, Jack McGlynn joined Houston from Philly for $2 million plus 1.5. And there was a piece in The Guardian from Graham Ruthven, who's a really good writer and covers MLS really well. He basically said, Jack McGlynn he's a good player, but he was an awkward fit for Philadelphia's style. He was always going to leave this summer. Under the old regime, he would have just gone to like Mechelen in Belgium because no one else can actually buy him within the league. Whereas he probably wanted to stay in MLS and he has done so. He's found a new spot. He's gone to Houston Dynamo and they're probably a really good fit for him. So he gets to stay in MLS. So that's keeping your own talent. And then the fun starts, right? So Lucho Acosta, who is a former MLS MVP, has decided that he decided to ditch Cincinnati this summer. He's done with them. And so he's signed for Dallas for $5 million.
Did he have some dramatic American falling out with the organisation?
I read that he was fed up with the front office and that he didn't agree.
They always fall out with the front office.
He didn't agree with the direction of the club or something like that. I mean, I don't know. Lucho Acosta.
I think it might have just been time.
Yeah, it might have been time. But
they'd also smashed the MLS transfer record bringing Kevin Denke from Cercle Brugge. Yeah. So I imagine he might have been looking at that going, hang on, I thought I was the guy.
Yeah,
I was the rock.
But he went to Dallas for $5 million, and then since he bought Evander from Portland for $12 million to replace him. Evander is an excellent player at this level and has had a couple of years at Portland. So $12 million. That's a full-on transfer.
Massive.
Like between
it's the 11th most expensive transfer in the history of MLS.
There you go.
Outgoing at the very least.
Yeah, and it's obviously the most expensive transfer between two MLS clubs by $7 million. So it's been really interesting to watch. Like this rule get put in place, and the transfers have been happening over the course of the last 21 days by the time this episode goes out, and teams are figuring out these new rules. And they're going, right, what can we do? They're defining value as they go. It's a bit of trial and a bit of error, and they're trying to figure out, well, hang on a minute, so I've got this much money to spend. What if I get him? What will that do? And you can see like the toes in the water with Joveljic, a pretty low-key one with Jack McGlynn, and then bang, Lucho Acosta moves and Evander for $12 million. That sets a new market. And all the other clubs will be looking at this and going, okay, what does this mean for my players? What does this mean for this value? How much is that guy? It's really interesting.
Are they expecting, as a result of this, for MLS to be have much more dramatic movement in terms of table position this year? Are they expecting teams to suddenly improve and decrease?
That already happens like pretty violently.
It's pretty changeable compared to, say, the Premier League, where it tends to be people are stuck in the similar sort of area.
I would slightly disagree. I think MLS used to be the most up and down league in, maybe across the major leagues in the world, right? Like you actually used to look at it and be like, and even still, right? Last year, LA Galaxy won MLS Cup. The year before that, they came second bottom of the Western Conference, right? So it can can switch.
You can't disagree with that, mate.
You can't disagree with that. But I do think this time out, and when we were looking at one for the Ranks podcast earlier this week, and two, kind of doing a little bit of research for this podcast, when I was looking at the teams that I thought were going to be successful this year, and obviously I can be proven wrong, but it feels a lot like most of the same teams from last year. It doesn't feel like there's been all that many dramatic swings. And one of the things that this does do, I think, which is interesting, is it suddenly removes the kind of socialist element from the league. Because suddenly, if you've got an owner that's willing to go out and spend, they can go out and spend. They can buy players from around the league. They don't have to work within the same caps. You still have to, ultimately deal with a salary cap of some distinction, but it's not the same as what it was. There are now, as Sam points out, ways around it. And I think it might just spark the start of a place where we start to see MLS stratify into those owned by really rich owners who are willing to spend and those who are less willing to spend. And, we'll talk about clubs and whatever, but one of the things that I was noticing was you're looking at Montreal and being like, there should be so much more to grab onto here, but there isn't, because they've not gone out and spent any money.
They don't spend money, no.
And they don't spend any money. And so therefore, with this new system in place, with the old system in place, you used to occasionally get lucky, right? They used to be able to build a squad, and it's not Montreal used to spend. They brought in Didier Drogba all those years ago. There was periods of real success there. But I do wonder, with an owner who's not willing to particularly spend money, and look, that's not a criticism, it's an observation. I wonder if there is an element now where we're starting to see it will see it stratify based on how much teams are willing to spend to improve their squads.
But that is also present in the other US sports. So you're not really offering any kind of criticism, because even in the very established systems of other US sports, some owners are referred to as cheap, right? And some clubs don't tend to spend that much money. My Detroit Lions were accused of being very cheap for a long time, and they were very poor during that time, but the owners didn't really care too much. And so every time you look at the free agencies and you look at how much salary cap certain teams have got left over, there's always the same teams there with like 80 million spare. You can spend up to a certain limit, but you don't have to spend that much money if you don't want to. It's always the same. It's always the same guys. So it's up to you how much you want to spend, and how competitive you want to be. That's fine. That echoes through all US sports, and it's not particularly a problem for some MLS franchises.
No. Jack, you mentioned it there with the MLS Cup. Let's strip it right back to the sort of very roots of the whole competition. How does it work?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Right, so do you want the actual full-on basics?
Yeah,
right, so
let's have the full-on basics.
30 teams in MLS, 15 in the Western Conference, 15 in the Eastern Conference. San Diego became the 30th MLS club. They will, when they start the season tomorrow, they will become the 30th franchise to play in this season. So they're split across sort of geographical lines. And each team plays 34 games during the course of a regular season. So they play everyone in their conference once at home, once away, and then there's a sort of split of a load of other games that they just get from across the conferences. So you still travel, but you don't play everyone in the opposite. So everyone in the West... Is
it randomised?
Everyone in the West plays everyone in the West twice. Mm-hmm. And then you play games against teams from the East. Now,
how do they choose that?
I think it is randomised, okay. Yeah, correct.
The fixture computer.
Nice. But I think more than that, it's changed obviously this year, because finally we have even numbers in the two conferences again, which has helped.
There were 29 teams the last couple of years.
Come on, man. Yeah. So it meant that you played different amounts of games in the West. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Same amount of games in the season, but you played different amounts of games against your own conference. But that's the basics of it. And then at the end of the season, the top 9 teams in each conference end up qualifying for the postseason in some form or another. The top 4 end up with home advantage, seeded throughout the MLS playoffs, and then the teams who come 5th, 6th and 7th get away games, and the team who come 8th and 9th play in a wild card to get into the tournament. Okay. And then the wild card winner ends up playing the top seed, if you know what I mean. So by that point, it's a bracket, and then at the end, you have Western Conference Final, Eastern Conference Final to determine the 2 winners, and those 2 winners play for MLS Cup. So one from the East, one from the West in every MLS Cup. There's also the Supporters Shield.
So just quickly, and that again, complete parallel to how every other American sports works.
Yes, yeah.
NFL Same split in 32 teams, 16-16, NFC, AFC, Super Bowl is winners of the NFC.
Sure, but it's not as geographical.
It's not quite, no, because they actually in individual divisions of 4. However, the idea that the best of this lot versus the best of this lot will compete for the big prize is pretty standard.
Yeah, You get it in baseball as well, the NL and the AL and all of those things. So there's also the Supporters' Shield, which is the last bit, which is given to the team who racks up the most points in the regular season across both conferences. So they combine them in terms of points. Whoever comes top of that league wins the Supporters' Shield, but that's not MLS Cup. So
do people
last
care
year,
about that?
Inter Miami won Supporters' Shield, and it was changed so that they got a Club World Cup spot. Now you can make of that what you will. All right,
Nice,
you can
because they bombed out of the playoffs and no one expected it.
Well, they had been given that spot before they bombed out the playoffs.
Bex had a word, did he?
Had they?
Yeah,
Okay.
they were given it. As soon as they won it, they were like, "Wow, now this has changed, and now you get into Club World Cup for winning the Supporters' Shield." Everyone was like, "What?"
Okay,
but the Supporters' Shield
Okay,
does
Gianni.
matter, but nowhere near as much as MLS Cup.
Still a trophy.
Okay. And before we move on, is there a reputation for either the West or the East is known as being better than the other?
There are, I think, some stylistic things that carry through.
Ooh.
I would say that, actually, regardless of East and West, the really, really good players, they tend to gravitate towards the really prestigious cities. Now, on the West Coast, you've got LA, and a lot of players want to play for LA. So the LA clubs and down that coast, they do tend to have a bit of a reputation for getting the biggest stars. So like guys like Carlos Vela end up going there. And obviously, as you work your way through like the US geography, you can understand why Hispanic players might favour playing for Dallas or Houston or up and down the West Coast. That sort of thing happens a lot. The New York market is also, very competitive. But I think a rough characterization for me right now would be the West tend to get the real true attacking stars, and the Eastern teams seem to be more like teams. Like they're built a bit better as actual functioning football teams, and they rely less on the star power. That's kind of the split I would make.
Until Miami.
Oh, until Miami, which is might as well just move coasts.
Yeah, okay. Miami. So I think it's really interesting because actually, Sam's right. Like traditionally, you look at the biggest names that have gone there down the years, and you look at your Robbie Keanes, for example.
That's the first big name you came up with.
I think Robbie Keane might have been the player who went to MLS and genuinely gave it like his all the most.
Yeah.
I think like when you look at actually everyone that went over there, of all the players that really went and just went, yes, MLS is a thing and I'm going to do it, Robbie Keane was very much one of them, part of a really, really cool Galaxy team. Yeah. But then also like Zlatan Ibrahimovic went to the Galaxy, Chicharito went to the Galaxy. At the same time, Vela was at LAFC. They just began and there was all those kind of things going on. And so there have been players in New York. We obviously saw Pirlo there. We saw Lampard there. Yeah. There was a lot of...
And Kaka was down in Orlando for a bit.
Thierry Henry was at the Red Bulls, right? Yeah. So there's a couple of different markets. But I think Sam's generally right. What I think is interesting is that Miami have flipped the script and they've gone to this kind of old school Galaxy kind of approach, whilst the Galaxy are kind of pioneering a new sort of based approach, which is... to bring in younger stars rather than as established names. We saw the likes of Ricky Puig go there, but Gabriel Peck as well and Joseph Pansel. There was a lot of players who went in there kind of with a point to prove, and it ended up with them triumphing last season. Then you get these kind of odd, different franchises with real reputations for certain things. This Seattle side have tended to shy away from the kind of superstar nature of their West Coast rivals, but have been the most consistent team in MLS kind of across the board for the last decade. They're just always there all thereabouts.
And they've got that die-hard fan, don't they, as well? The fight and win guy.
Well, yes, exactly. But they also, they have...
That's what I know them by.
He plays up front.
He plays up top, I think that corner, and especially the Seattle-Portland rivalry, which is really, really embedded and probably, the most... fan-based rivalry of all of the MLS rivalries put together, like the one that's felt the most by the fan bases. I think you look at that corner, that kind of Oregon, Portland corner that exists up there in Seattle, and that is a real hub for football, like a real soccer kingdom in so many ways. And you see that in the fan bases, like in the Portland Timbers, in the Seattle Sounders, the way that games are, one, attended, but two, bought into as well by the fan base, are kind of unlike anything else we've seen for a long, long time.
Dougie, I'm lucky enough to go to a Seattle Sounders game and do the march through the streets to the stadium, joined in with all the flares and stuff. It was great fun.
What was it like?
I'd never been part of a march to the stadium. They all agreed to meet at a square at a certain time, like an hour and a half before kickoff, and say we'll all just gather here and then we'll march to the game. They'll sing some songs and they'll light some flares and all,
some beer
and all move along. And they don't actually. Half the crowd stops just before the stadium because they all went to the pub, which is great. that's brilliant.
You were in that half.
I was. Well, I wasn't going to buy a beer in the stadium, and I'm sure our American listeners do not need to be reminded that a can of beer in an American stadium is like, it's literally like taking out a mortgage. So yeah, you do your drinking before you go in, for sure. But I went along and watched. It wasn't actually an MLS game that I saw; it was a Leagues Cup game. So Seattle lost.
Okay.
Building a business may feel like a big jump, but OnDeck Small Business Loans can help keep you afloat. With lines of credit up to $100,000 and term loans up to $250,000, OnDeck lets you choose the loan that's right for your business. As a top-rated online small business lender, OnDeck's team of loan advisors can help you find the right business loan to fit your needs. Visit OnDeck.com for more information. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank. OnDeck does not lend in North Dakota. All loans and amounts subject to lender approval.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And bringing it to 2025, who are the teams to watch this season, Sam?
Well, Jack and I'm sure we'll cover some ground here between us. I'll say I always keep an eye on Seattle because obviously I've been to see them, so I have a minor attachment, despite the fact that I don't really like teams that play in green because it doesn't really suit me. It's not my colour. It should be more of Jack's team than mine. But there's a lot of excitement.
Green, it's called.
Yeah,
it's very special.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement around Seattle because they've made a couple of big acquisitions in the off-season. Jesus Ferreira, who has been one of the better MLS strikers and proven strikers over the years, and Paul Arriola as well. So they're always there or thereabouts, as Jack said. They're a really good team. They're really well coached, and they've always had a really solid defence, and they're very strong at home. Mm-hmm. So adding those pieces up front could be the difference. We'll have to see. I'm not sure. The LA teams are going to be strong because they have the star power. Olivier Giroud went there last year. I'm sure you remember Giroud joining LAFC. Do you have any idea of how few goals he scored?
I didn't even know he was there. I feel like an absolute idiot. No,
right. He departed at last summer and joined for the second half. He barely scored any goals. So I'm kind of hoping for their sake that turns around a little bit and LA sort of get back to where they're supposed to be. And LA Galaxy have got an uphill battle because they've set a very high bar. Ricky Puig has torn his ACL, so he's going to miss a long time, like first half of the season at least, maybe most of it. And they've lost a couple of other players as well. And of course they won it last year.
What's his reputation in the league like, Ricky Puig?
He's an absolute baller.
Really?
Yeah, he runs the show. Like, he's ridiculously good.
Outrageous.
Really?
He's been back to his very, very best. And it's really, really nice to see. Now, there is the caveat that he will miss most of this season because he did his ACL Western Conference final. But yeah, he is going to be out for a lot of this season, and how that affects the Galaxy is an interesting question, I think.
So they kind of, I say what they did last season to recover from it. There was only a game and a half to do so or whatever, but they became obviously a lot more direct rather than possession focused, because I was looking at quotes from the coach and he was like, well, we've got with Ricky in the team, we can give him 140 touches a game, he can run the show. If he's not there, obviously they don't have anybody. That's the problem with having designated players, is they're so much better than the others, and when you lose one, you have to completely reconfigure the team. So that is like for defending champions to have to reconfigure to that degree, and they've lost a couple of other players as well.
Jovic, right?
Jovic and Gaston Brugman as well. Like, it's hard. It's going to be really hard for them to live up to the expectations. And there's one more I want to mention, and it's not because I think they're a contender, but it's because I'm going to quietly support them. It's Dean Jones's favourite, San Diego.
Okay.
He's got a season ticket. And
he does.
He said it's 10 minutes down the road when I asked him. It's great
10 minutes
stuff.
in the car.
And in the car, right. They've got a partnership with FC Nordsjælland. And I like my Danish football. So they've had a couple of players head on over, including Marcus Ingvartsen. So I'm really keen to see how that plays out, because this is another way of running an MLS club that's a little different to maybe how these other ones have done. I mean, I appreciate Red Bull have the networks, and New York City are part of the City Group and stuff like that. But pairing up with Nordsjælland, and as a result, pairing up with the Right to Dream Academy out of Africa, very interesting way of going about things and could genuinely change things for the better as well for MLS. Like, I'm going to keep an eye on that.
Okay, and one final question before I ask Jack about his teams to watch. I thought you might put out a little mention for DC United with former Villa hero Christian Benteke.
Yeah. I mean,
he's doing well over there.
I mean, he's. What do I say about DC United?
It's basically Benteke or bust.
It's the Benteke show. They literally just cross him the ball.
he was a golden
stats
boot.
up here, 23 goals in 30 games.
Yeah, correct. And the next most goals for anyone at DC last year was 6.
Wow.
Like, it's literally Benteke or bust, and they have not added any pieces to try and support him whatsoever.
Okay.
It could be a lot worse, I think, this season for DC United,
But
sadly.
if you're a Benteke fan and you like watching him score headers, this is the club for you, because that's all he does and that's all they do.
Love it. Okay, Jack, any other teams to watch?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Sam didn't really mention Inter Miami there.
They're so easy to forget because they're so obvious. It's such a weird thing.
I mean, they obviously lost Diego Gomez.
What are Inter Miami like to watch as a team? I imagine when there's, as Sam says, there's some players that are clearly so much better, even if they are so much older than they obviously were. How does it work as a team? Is it functional?
Yeah, well, it has been under Tata Martino, but obviously he decided he was going to part ways with the club this summer, and they've brought in Javier Mascherano, who's another member of the Old Boys Club. So
fascinating.
It's fascinating, but we also have no real idea of what Javier Mascherano is going to bring. Obviously, the only real time we've seen him in a management role was with that Argentina side at the Olympics, who did okay, but didn't really, I don't think, live up to the sum of their parts, shall we say. So obviously, Miami have a lot of very, very good players. They've lost a couple of interesting pieces. Like Diego Gomez is a big one, I think, because of what he brought to the team last season and that kind of energy that he bounced around. They have also lost Leo Campagna, who's popped off as well. He's decided to pursue new adventures in MLS. So he's gone. So it really is kind of the Old Boys Club, right? Like there are quite a lot of them knocking around. There's Messi, Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets, and Jordi Alba, and now managed by Mascherano as well. So the Fab Five.
It's amazing
in some ways.
Who's aging best aside from Messi?
Ooh,
Great question.
Alba?
Yeah, Alba seems just fine. Like, Alba doesn't look that different to what he looks like before. Suarez doesn't really have any knees anymore.
Busquets just because he doesn't, never relied on anything physical, really.
No, he's doing fine. I think he's had
to play at centre back a fair bit. Like, it's been a bit of a strange scenario.
But Alba now, like, fully into his mid-30s, I would have thought, I appreciate it's a different pace of league, but I'm surprised at just how often he's still making those those pelting runs that crash into, but he makes all the same runs and moves that you always associated Jordi Alba with. Still, and I just thought he would have slowed down by now, and he hasn't really. So, Mascherano, by the way, I must say, if there's anyone in the world who knows what it takes to construct a team around a player like Messi and cover the hard yards, surely it's this guy, because he literally did it.
Yeah.
He did it for Barcelona and Argentina. If there's anyone in the world that knows what is required to cover off those gaps, it's got to be him. And so I'm pretty sure Messi is involved in these hires as well now. There's talk that he'll go on and take an ownership percentage when he retires. He seems to have been involved in the Mascherano hire. He was involved in the director of football hire this winter as well. They've changed some of the front office, and it's an Argentinian dude who apparently Messi refers to as his footballing dad. So There's a lot going on here, which is running straight through Lionel Messi, and it's not just the play on the pitch. So again, it's a very interesting experiment, and Mascherano has been picked very specifically with Messi in mind.
Okay, you guys have talked a lot about the sort of stars of the league, as it were. And we've seen in recent years Tati Castellanos go over to Lazio and do pretty well, particularly this season at Lazio, for a side that have kind of...
Well, he didn't score for about a year, and then he scored about 10 in one game, didn't he?
Yeah.
Like a nosebleed.
But, I mean, Lazio are quite a strange side. I don't think if you look at their team, they should be doing as well as they're doing. But, yeah, they're very functional, and Baroni's done a great job out there. But my question to you, Jack, maybe to go first, is who is the MLS star that could do a Castellanos-esque move?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great question, and I'm going to have to think about it. So what I'm going to do is stall for time by talking about other exports from MLS for a little while, and then I'm going to throw it to Sam. It is worth noting that, because I was going to bring this up earlier when we were talking about reasons to watch and whatever, but you look at the biggest transfers out of MLS, right? So John Duran joined Aston Villa for nigh on 30 million euros ish. Miguel Almiron obviously went to Newcastle for 24 million. Thiago Almada went to Botafogo. He's now at Lyon. One to just keep an eye on. Ricardo Pepi went to Augsburg and obviously flying at PSV. Then we've seen a few others who maybe haven't quite got the same level. Georgi Petrovic, though, came obviously to Chelsea and was fine last year. I'm sorry, I'm still a bit mad that they got rid of him because I think he's a perfectly good goalkeeper. Tati Castellanos went off to Lazio, as you say. Alphonso Davies went to Bayern Munich for 14 million, a fair few years ago now. Obviously, that was in 2018, I think. But what we've seen, Cucho Hernandez just made a nigh on record sale for Columbus, joining Betis. He made his debut at the weekend. Diego Gomez, as we say, going to Brighton. Brendan Aronson came over and has been very good for Leeds this season. He went to Salzburg at the time, but the point I'm making is that there's a lot of players here who have made a jump across and who are young players who have been successful. And when we talk about MLS sometimes, I think we sometimes get caught up in the idea of what it used to be. And the fact that even if Lionel Messi and Sergio Busquets are running around having a bit of a party on their own in Miami, that is a storyline, but it shouldn't be the dominant narrative that we're talking about when it comes to MLS. What we should be talking about is the other things that are coming the other way, players that are now coming out of that division and having success elsewhere. I think all of that is important because it kind of refutes some of the old narratives that we used to use for MLS. But I'm going to throw it to Sam.
Yeah, just doing a little bit of scrabbling around there for names. And so really what you're asking for is probably a player skewing towards young here in order to make that breakthrough. So, yeah. Diego Luna won Young Player of the Year last year, and he is very, very good for Real Salt Lake. There aren't actually that many reasons to tune into Real Salt Lake games. No offence to their fans.
Well, he's going to get... I think the thing with Luna now is that he's going to get the keys to the castle at RSL because they basically have completely and utterly ripped up their playbook from last season and they've kind of left him as the main man. Now, Diego Luna's a funny old character because he's very small, he's quite stocky, he's kind of that Andy Reid barrel build, to use an old BR football phrase. And I think there's been question marks all of his career about, is he in fighting shape? And we were listening to an interview with him on Sirius the other day when I was on with Glenn Crooks, and he was basically like, Glenn Crooks was like, you got a lot of criticism. Diego Luna was like, loads of people just said I was out of shape. I wasn't out of shape. This is just how my body is. Like, this is how I am built.
And the Ross McCormack build.
The Ross McCormack build, correct.
Are you fat? Yeah. No, I'm not, I swear.
But it's like one of those... I think that Diego Luna has been a player who people have had the doubts about for their entire, for his entire career. And now he has this opportunity. We obviously saw him for the USMNT in Camp Cupcake. And it's going to be intriguing to see how he does with the keys in the castle now for RSL, because a lot of their attacking methods, a lot of their creativity, he's going to be a bit of a totem pole for that for RSL this year.
And the other one I would add in here, we've mentioned him previously, there's serious speculation that Gabriel Peck will not last in MLS for the whole year, which obviously means that people have got their eye on him. So Brazilian 24-year-old, brilliant forward. He and Luna would be my picks. Although, really, to stress, there'll be people out there listening that watch more MLS than I do, and I give it my best. The time zones are my enemy here, and bandwidth is my enemy. But I take an interest. I do my best with it. What I really wanted to talk about today, which we've already mentioned, and we can come on to, is exactly what reputation MLS should carry, and where it's moving to, and how we should really gauge it amongst the world of football. Because these changes that they have steadily made over the years, they've probably been too few and far between over too long a period of time. But they are really, it does feel like they're getting it, doesn't it? I mean, everything that we've explained to you here in terms of the timeline and the changes they make to the league, very, very slowly and steadily, would you agree, they are trying to align themselves with the rest of football rather than being so insular?
Absolutely, that's what it sounds like from an outside perspective, for sure. You mentioned how the league's reputation is kind of changing around the world. Kind of a sort of more niche question. How's the league's reputation changing within American sport as well? Because obviously there are some huge behemoths of sport there in terms of basketball and American football and baseball as well. Jack, maybe you'll be best placed to answer this, but where is soccer at in US national attention?
It's the fastest growing sport in America if you don't take pickleball into account, so that's good. That
is good.
So I've just got to say, you've got to give pickleball its due, apparently. But It's the fastest growing sport amongst young people as well, which I think is really, really important. And you know, we're obviously coming up to a really important time in the US whole like football narrative as a general whole. And you look at what happened obviously in the World Cup in 94 and the fact that MLS launched 2 years off the back of that. And, you know, we're now 30 years into that project. This is another big milestone, I think, coming up in 2026. But before that, obviously, 2025 Club World Cup. Now, I don't care if you like the Club World Cup, hate the Club World Cup, think it's a complete waste of time, whatever. It's a big tournament to have there. And I think that matters in and of itself. Now, whether they're going to be able to sell that out, whether people are going to care, I don't know. But I think that in terms of infrastructure, we're starting to see almost every team now coming towards a soccer-specific stadium, if you will. You know, we're seeing new stadiums built for someone like NYCFC, who have had success, have been bouncing around, have been playing at the Yankee Stadium for a long period of time.
Watching them play on that baseball pitch.
Bizarre.
Not good.
Horrid.
Yeah, it really was horrid. I agree. But, you know, they've got a new stadium being, you know, opened up very shortly. It's all very, very exciting. And I think that now you're looking at these specific stadiums, you're looking at, you know, facilities growing, you're looking at the interest and the aspects of things. It's still, I think MLS has a way to go in convincing certain people who watch a lot of European football that it's a product worth investing in. But the more that, you know, it continues to grow, there is continual talk. You know, USL also exists within the USA, and they're now talking about making a rival Division 1 that will have a promotion relegation scheme. I don't think that will necessarily happen in the way that it's being put together now. I think what will happen is that eventually in 5-6 years, once USL implements this model, the two will merge, and we will end up with a genuine pyramid in MLS and in American football, which I think is a good thing. I think there is so much American investment in European football, in English football, that, you know, managers or businessmen are starting to look at things like, okay, you look at the Wrexham project, fine, but, you know, could we do that with other teams? Can we take them up through the divisions? And I think once there is a model that also offers that to businesses and people who want to own community aspects in America, that will also take over and take off. So I think the money's there. I think the interest's there. It's just a question of putting it all together. And right now, MLS is working its way towards doing that quite well from where I'm standing.
Well, it certainly sounds like it's trending in the right direction. Just finally, Sam, is there anything MLS needs to work on?
It's a tough question to answer that, because most of the remaining things that we would...
Goal line technology. Goal line technology. Dean Smith was going absolutely mental about this. Dean Smith manages Charlotte now. He was going mental about this. He was like, they were asking about VAR. He was like, yeah, we've got VAR, but we don't have goal line tech. We don't have so many automated offsides. He's like, what is going on? He's like, we need this to make the league serious. I was like, you can't say things like that. You're a manager in the league. He said literally like, to make the league authentic and serious. And you're like, oh, Dean.
Well, there you go. That's probably the answer. Because a lot of the criticisms you would throw at MLS and what do you need to do? They would be, you know, big picture things. They would be overarching things. There would be things like Jack has just touched upon with, you know, making sure everyone's in a soccer specific stadium or promotion and relegation to give it that authenticity. Just think like if they do manage to do that merge and they do create a promotion relegation and then they were able to create a third tier and allow a team to get relegated twice in a row, Dougie could finally pick a team.
Good.
Back to back.
That would be good.
I mean, on the back of this podcast, I might well. I have found this absolutely fascinating, guys.
Is there any team in particular that we've mentioned that you feel drawn to?
I think DC United having the one Benteke up front, that feels very like sort of Sunderland over the years. The one sort of hero.
I love you, Dougie, but you pick clubs like I do. Yeah, with a propensity to pain.
That's a tough one.
I don't really relate with anything to do with LA culture personally. Yeah. It would have to be someone on the East Coast, I think.
Well, time zone is a factor there too. Like anybody in the UK picking a West Coast club is like, well, you know, you're going to struggle to watch them. Like, you should be in bed at that point.
What's a sort of quite a relevant team stuck in the middle geographically?
Cincinnati aren't relevant, but they are sort of stuck in the middle, aren't they?
Cincinnati are in the middle, but they're also very good. They have them as second favourites to go and win the East this year.
That sounds quite fun.
Cincinnati are good. You know, Evander's joined, Kevin Denke's joined. I think it could be a lot of fun in Cincinnati this year. That might be a good one. And they have a cool colour scheme, orange and blue.
Nice. Oh, yeah, lovely. Right, okay, jazzy.
Guys, you're a bit of a glory hunter then, because Cincinnati have been really good recently.
Well, I need a bit of glory in my life, for sure. Guys, I found that absolutely fascinating. I hope all all the listeners did too. As Jack pointed out, it's such a massive couple of years now for American soccer, and I think it's a really good time to get informed about it, and you pitched it really, really well. So thank you both so much for your time. Sam, thank you very much.
Cheers, buddy.
Jack, thank you very much as ever.
Thank you, Dougie. It was a pleasure.
And do go check out Ranks FC's podcast, which dropped a couple of days ago as well, which was talk about MLS as well. It's a real MLS treat this week.
Full season preview. A little bit of depth.
Preview. Love it, rather than this explainers for the idiots like me. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye.
If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Sign up for Greenlight today at greenlight.com/podcast.
Hello, Rag Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Allo or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.